You have found what lights you up. I'm your host, Sunny the Life Coach, and I'm here because I see you searching for something or someone out there to help you feel better. Something to take away the pain that you're feeling, the inadequacies. I know all of the things that happen in life can leave you feeling empty. Your search is over. This podcast is all about finding your own freedom and power to love yourself enough to shine in the ways you were always meant to, the ways in which you are already fully capable of. If you're ready for some real talk, some serious truth bombs, and a few F-bombs, you are in the right place. Let's do this. Let's get lit. Hey there, and welcome back if you are a returning listener. And if you are new, thank you for tuning into this episode where I am going to have a conversation with producer David Winkler on his most vulnerable project of all, his memoir, called The Arrangement, a Love Story. David comes from Hollywood royalty, literally. Those are not his words. They are the words of his publishers and promoters, and maybe as fact. He's going to share with us in this conversation the generations of filmmakers and producers that he is a part of. Where might you have seen his work? Well, think Rocky. That was his dad. Now think Creed. That's David. Good stuff, right? Oh my God, I have been loving the Creed series with Michael B. Jordan. My God, not only is he so easy on the eyes, he is fantastic at character portrayal when it comes to that athletic persona, right? This is the world in which David Winkler grew up in. Today, you will hear him relay that he had a very comfortable life. And at some point as a child, he pondered writing a book, but he didn't feel that he had anything to really write about. Who wants to hear the story of a privileged life? Yet, are any of our lives truly privileged? That's what David found in his match on the dating site Seeking Arrangement. Upscale online dating for professionals. I Googled it. I did not even know this site existed, but hey, I haven't exactly been seeking. I Googled it, and that's what I found. Yes, it is a real site. Yes, people do this. Upscale online dating for professionals. And that's what this is about. Thinking about how privileged we are and perhaps lamenting on that just a little bit. And this is very much a Pretty Woman type story. And it's David's real life. Only he doesn't look like a Richard Gere, by his own admission, and the woman that he fell in love with doesn't look like Julia Roberts. It's actually a pretty great story that we're going to dive in and talk about today. There are a number of reasons why I wanted to have this conversation with David, not the least of which is that it is rare to come across a man in this day who is willing to be this vulnerable. He is willing to say all of the things that he has always known he needed to say. We are going to talk about what compelled him to create an account on Seeking Arrangement in the first place. We are going to talk about the relationship that formed from his ability to be true to his own needs in the moment. We are going to talk about what sex work is and why it might just not be a problem, and We are going to talk about what his family thinks of this story, including his children and his parents, because let's be honest, that's what we're all thinking about when we share, right? What will the most precious people to me think of me when I say all of the things out loud to everyone? We are truly going to talk about all the things here, all of the family dynamics that come into play when seeking an arrangement comes into play. Let's get to it. Welcome, David Winkler, to the podcast. What lights you up, my friend?
Thank you for having me on the podcast. What lights me up is my book. After decades of being a filmmaker, writing my book, The Arrangement, the Love Story, was the project of my life. It was the creative experience of my life, and the most personal story I've told in any medium. So, even though it was really hard work, I'm constantly lit up by that. I'm very proud of it.
I love it. I love it. Let's talk about this book, David, because yes, it is to see to actually see a man write so vulnerably about just love and expression of love and how that takes different twists and turns, and all of that is so different. It is so different. And, I don't want to say that it's graphic, so to speak, like a graphic romance novel, but it's like, yeah, there are some parts that are, we women will like get into these books. We will get into these books, and to have it written by a man is like, whoa, where did that come from?
Well, I think the first question I ask of you is, why do you think it's rare for a man to write a book about, love and sex and relationships?
Mm, mm, that is so good. I think because I am a coach, because I study people, because I study our society at large, I think it is straight up conditioning. I think it is straight up conditioning on your
Right,
part, on our part, on everything. It's like women are the emotional ones, right?
right,
Not men.
right. Well,
And
I
you're
think
writing this story at a time when you're like, and you, because you say it several times in the story, I'm 53 at the time that that you're writing it, and it's just, I'm in awe of it.
well, thank you. I think that I think the whole. I'm sure your readers don't know what the book is about, so
Yeah,
I should
let's
just
talk about that.
let them know that the book is about a relationship I had as quote unquote a sugar daddy. I met this young woman on a site called Seeking Arrangement, where you have what's called mutually beneficial arrangements, which are which are a transactional relationship generally, where you agree to help them financially, and they date you in return. And uh, I fell madly in love, which is sort of not the norm on the site. Most people go on to, keep people out of their emotional sphere. But I was one of the few people who went on the site and fell madly in love. And the relationship turned out to be incredibly tumultuous. And the things that happened, it's almost, if I told you, not only would I give away the suspense, but you wouldn't believe me if I told you in a paragraph. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I learned so much from the relationship, and it broke down a wall that I had had emotionally for decades. So much so that I had a nickname for myself. I was called Hard David.
Yes.
Really couldn't feel things. I didn't identify with the most common of emotions like loneliness. And if you had asked me what intimacy and vulnerability was like, I would have looked at you like I probably couldn't even answer the question. But, there's something about difficulty and that makes you learn lessons much faster. So even though the relationship was tumultuous, I learned lessons about love, about relationships, about family, about intimacy and vulnerability and communication. And, I'd always been an honest person and avoided some of the pitfalls that a lot of Hollywood men got into. But, I definitely just come out of a marriage and I wanted to have fun and found this site that seemed like a lot of fun. But, love has a way of sort of creeping up on you when you're least expecting it. And by the time that the book takes place over almost exactly a year. And by the time the relationship was over and then the catharsis of writing it, I was a completely transformed human being. And anybody who tells you people don't change, essentially, I'm here to tell you you do. It's just you have to be hit over the head with a hammer. And my hammer was heartbreak.
My hammer was heartbreak. Oh, whoa. That's deep. But it's true. And I really appreciate that you stated that it's like sometimes the most difficult and painful and quick moments in our lives transform us the deepest. I'm paraphrasing.
It was the best happened to me. I mean, yeah. I won't give away,
right.
Too happened, but it was really difficult, and it was the best thing ever happened to me. I mean, I wish I could go back to myself at the age of 16 with the knowledge that I have now about how to be in love. I would do so many things differently.
Don't we all? I mean, seriously, I would love to take my wisdom from where I am now back to my teenage self 100%. That is just not the way that we are designed now, is it?
Right.
That's just not the way that it happens. Well, let's back up a little bit and talk about your background. And, you have mentioned a couple of times now that you're in the Hollywood circuit. So you are a producer and you come from what is known as a family of royalty, if you will, in that regard. So how did that play into where you ended up with this particular relationship? I'm very curious about that.
Well, I mean, I grew up in a family. My father's a producer. He made the Rocky movies. So, and is one of the most prolific producers, in the history of Hollywood. But I go further back than that. My mother's father was a screenwriter. My mother's mother was a vaudeville performer. So, I came from a Hollywood family, and my brother's a producer. And I didn't want to be a producer originally. I did other things, but I had always, as a matter of fact, when I was 24, I had a surf shop. Like, I wanted to be a surfer.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go into film business. I wanted to do my own thing, but there was always this underpinning that I wanted to do something really creative. But I remember thinking, I don't have anything to say. I remember saying I'd love to write a book, when I was in my, teens and 20s, but I had nothing to say. I had grown up in such a comfortable atmosphere that lacked any drama whatsoever. My family gets along. We had certain dysfunctions like any family, but, comparatively, everything was, growing up, David Winkler was pretty wonderful. And then I started to write screenplays, and then I wrote some television shows, and I directed, and then I had children, and then I started producing with my father once I felt like I'd done my own personal work, and I would write screenplays. But the whole time I always felt like my screenplays were formulaic, or, action movies, or, mystery suspense, and they were not based in character. They were not based in any, I was not talking about anybody's heart in any of these movies. And even the movies I produced, I produced I took over with my brother and my father from doing the Rocky movies to the spin-off Creed movies, and we're still making one. We have one coming out in Christmas.
Yay. Love
Yeah.
them.
And safe to say, I think it's the best one yet. But all the while, I wanted to do something personal. And then, when I was in the middle of this relationship, this arrangement, I remember just thinking, God, this just has all the earmarkings of a good book. An older man, fresh out of divorce, meets a woman 20 years younger on this odd website that a lot of people use but don't talk about. It's a really common, it's a very successful website.
Mm.
And then of course, as the relationship went on and things started getting crazier and crazier and crazier, I knew that it would be a good book. And then it, when the relationship came to a close, I said, okay, I'm going to write a book, but I was afraid of it. So I contacted a ghostwriter, and I asked him to ghostwrite the book. And his name is Al, and Al sat down with me for 30 hours and interviewed me and taped it. And at the end of it said to me, I won't write it. The only person who can write this is you. It's that personal of a story.
Mm.
And I realized that, that little kid in me who'd always wanted to write a personal story finally had his story. And I decided to write a book. I mean, within days of the end of the relationship, I was writing full time. And then of course the pandemic came and I had 2 years of time to put in to writing.
Mm-hmm.
And safe to say, I'm sure there are people who love the book and people who hate the book, but nobody will say it doesn't come from a personal place.
Yeah.
No. So I'm really proud of that and feel like I literally remember being a 16-year-old boy walking on the street saying, God, I want to write a book, but I got nothing to say. And, now to 40 years later to be saying, wow, I did it. And, I hope people like it and I hope people identify with it, because even though we met in a website that's very unique,
mm-hmm.
The themes and the lessons that I learned are totally universal. I mean, I hadn't cried in 20 years before this relationship came out, and suddenly I'm a man capable of, like Brene Brown would be proud of me. I completely.
Oh my goodness. Yes. It it's so good in that regard, in that aspect. Thank you for sharing that little bit of a backstory. And I know you're just only scratching the surface, just barely touching on it, because you mentioned a few times in the book about tell the audience listeners today about what it is like to be a Hollywood producer, because you alluded to it a few times in the book, and now you have just explained like a little bit about how it works in terms of storytelling. Like there's an element of storytelling there. You're not a writer, but you are a producer, and so therefore you do consult or guide or that kind of thing. You do that. Tell us how you do that.
There are a lot of different kinds of producers. The producer I am is the creative producer, which is I'll come up with a story or I'll read a book and I'll hire a writer, and I'll work with them to create a screenplay that's really good, and then we'll try to cast it and find a director and get it made. And then when we're on the set, I'll stand by and if we have problems with the story, I'm there to help fix them. I think that if there's one thing that a producer does, all producers, whether they're creative producers or non, is that they're fixers. Like, if there's a problem on the set, we're there to fix the problem.
Mm.
And then when we're in the editing room, if the story is 20 minutes too long and there's some problem, because we've worked on so many different types of projects, we have the perspective to come in and say, hey, this is what the problem is and here's how you fix it. So and it kind of translated into the book, and that, I had another nickname, which was
Daddy Fix It. Yes. Yes.
My kids called me that because I would, because I can fix a broken toilet or a broken door, or patch drywall. But, it becomes a theme in the book, in that, I had always thought I could fix everything, but didn't realize how broken I was. And, had to learn to fix myself. I encountered a woman who had, some mental health issues. And, I learned a lot about each of these issues. And I learned that you can't really fix other people. It's hard enough to fix yourself.
Yeah.
So a producer is a fixer.
That's very helpful. I appreciate that analogy, and the and Daddy Fix It. Thank you for bringing that up. That was very helpful. The other thing I want to add is talking about the site that we can talk about the woman Jordan. Yes. We can at least name her in terms of that, because I know that, you talked about writing a book about your love story. You talked with her about that. But this particular site that you're talking about, walk me through, because I need to understand how you landed there instead of like Bumble or Tinder or that kind of thing. And, how did you land there?
Well, for me, I was married for a decade. I'm amicably divorced. I get along great with my ex-wife. We have 2 wonderful kids. And, but when I got out of, my marriage in my early 50s, before I got married, people didn't have Bumble and Tinder and The League and all these websites. So, when I came out, it was a little bit sort of like, Rip Van Winkle, waking up to a world of online dating. And I tried them all. I tried The League, I tried Bumble, I tried them all, but I was not looking for anything serious. And when I was on Seeking Arrangement, I discovered something that really, really surprised me. There's something about that website that accelerates everything. On Bumble, you go on a date and you talk about some things, and you go on a second date and a third date. And by the time you get really, really honest and really deep about, your failures and the things that make people really interesting, be 5 or 6 dates, or, sometimes 5 or 6 weeks. But there was something about Seeking Arrangement that I found, from the first date, you ask somebody, so tell me, why are you on this strange website? It's usually the first question you ask. You meet somebody and, you chat a little bit, and then you have a dinner date with them. The first thing everybody says, so why are you here? What's a nice guy like you doing in a place like this? And I just found that led to a level of honesty, and not everybody uses it this way. This is what my experience and the people I dated, it led to people just right from the front, answering questions and admitting, like I was capable of admitting that I'm not looking for anything serious. Whereas on Bumble, people would be saying, oh, well, you should have put that on your website, on your profile, because I'm looking to get married. And I just found it cut right through all the BS. And like any website, some people use it less honestly than others. A lot of people use it. A lot of married men are on the site. But the people that I've dated have it just sort of, it's, so I think once you start out on a date where you're being really brutally honest, it just proceeds, and you learn things about people you would never learn, in 2 or 3 dates, as opposed to 2 or 3 months.
Yeah. So that's how you kind of came to it. You just were checking all the sites, as Rip Van Winkle, as you say. You were kind of checking all these sites and saying, these are the options available to me. Like,
from all the sites. And I just found that was my favorite. And,
Mm-hmm.
let's face it, there's also, the people who go onto this website, they like the dynamic of an older man and a younger woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found that I was meeting, relatively age appropriate women. I was dating women. This woman, I was 52. She was 30.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going for, for teenagers or 18-year-olds or even 20-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
Wanted somebody who was mature and had life experience. But yeah, 50 is the new 30, and
Mm-hmm.
most women met on the website appreciate that they're dating a man who's successful and can support them, and also have the life experience to mentor them in some way. So
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Mm-hmm. And so you are the sugar daddy here. I mean, that's basically what this is. This is this site that you met the who you weren't expecting to meet on there, and having this crazy love-filled and tumultuous relationship was really you reaching out and putting yourself out there as, I'll be your sugar daddy.
Yeah, there's certain. It's a very consensual relationship. A woman literally signs up for the thing, and she has as much power as the man. She's interviewing you,
Mm-hmm.
and she gets to, you have dinner with them, and you ask, you ask questions of them, and they ask questions of you, and yeah, invariably the situation that you get to a point where you say, okay, for instance, Jordan had just had a heartbreak herself and was not looking for anything serious, and she had had some financial problems because she couldn't work. She was so depressed. So she went on the website looking for some additional help.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a symbiosis. I have a little extra cash to help somebody, and she needed help, and that's why they call it mutually beneficial.
Yeah. And also help me understand. I'm getting serious Pretty Woman vibes right now, and that that movie makes its way into your book as well, as a reference. But you know, that's what people think of, I think, when they think of a man with affluence and a little bit older, and okay, I'm just going to find this I don't know, for lack of a better word, and find this streetwalker and pull her out of that, and just we're going to live happily ever after. I know you didn't set out to do that, but at some point, did you feel like maybe that's where you were headed,
I'm sorry.
to like some kind of happy ending, to like
I
some kind of Pretty Woman
I
happy ending
I
with
I
Jordan?
thought we'd spend the rest of our life together. I
Yeah,
thought I was the woman in my life at the time.
yeah.
And and you know, and so did she. Like, we really thought at some point she moved in with me and my children. She was, in the
Mhm.
house. So we honestly, we did step away from being a transactional relationship into something, much more intimate and loving.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't think that's what most people go on the website for. I do think we were outliers.
Mhm.
Most people go on the website just to have fun. Most women just to get a little financial help. Let's
Mhm.
face it, not every sugar daddy looks like Richard Gere, and not every sugar baby looks like Julia Roberts. That's
Exactly.
the fantasy element of it.
It
Um,
is, yes.
but it's the simplest way of explaining the relationship. As a matter of fact, people have asked how do I explain my book to my children. I showed them Pretty Woman.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I was this, I'm Richard Gere, and then Jordan was the Julia Roberts, and we didn't meet on the street. I want
Right.
to be clear that, when I met Jordan, she was not a streetwalker,
Right.
having financial difficulties, but she had a job, and she went on the website, and she'd had a few relationships before me. Um, And, both of us chose very carefully. And, I talk about in the first chapter, one of the things that I liked about her the most was we never talked about money at all our first date. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
had this romantic first date. And the chapter is called A Genuine Arrangement, because I genuinely felt like this was a relationship from the start.
Mm-hmm.
And then we said, okay, well, what do you need financially so that you don't have to date multiple men? Um, and and So yeah, I think that everybody understands immediately that Pretty Woman is the reference to what the relationship is like.
Yeah, and that's why I brought that up, and that's why I use the term streetwalker, because you know I I recognize that just people listening to this who have not had the opportunity to read your book yet, it hasn't been published just yet, but it's close. We're getting there. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Is that I think that in general, just talking about the premise of it, people might have a difficult time discerning between prostitution and um, escort services, or what this is. I don't even know. What is the arrangement? Is it, I mean, is it a hybrid of the two? I mean, what of prostitution and escort? I mean, help
Well,
me
well,
understand that.
well. I think that first of all, the word arrangement is such a general term.
Mm-hmm.
For most marriages throughout the world are not based on romance. They are arranged marriages. I mean,
Mm,
still today,
yeah.
few people marry for romance. Their families introduce, and their children as a way of the families coming together and helping each other. So I mean, an arrangement is not like a new term.
Right.
Um, but there's a lot of different arrangements. Some people use arrangements as a way of uh, of keeping people out of their lives, and for a woman, some women use it as straight up prostitution. Um, I am personally, an existentially pro sex work, as long as it's not forced upon a person and a woman's not being human trafficked. I believe what a woman does with her body is up to her,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe in mutual consent. So I don't think there's anything ethically wrong with sex work when done in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
uh, but yeah, some people would look at it and automatically say sugar baby is just another word for an escort or prostitute. I don't personally believe that. I think there's a lot of difference.
Mm-hmm.
I think women who are on this site have every opportunity to to choose what man they date. They're not being forced. They're not being sent to a hotel room.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these are women who, you like, for instance, on my profile in Seeking Arrangement, when I had it, I was background checked, you
Mm-hmm.
know, literally verified this person was safe to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm aware. I think if you're pro sex work, you're going to be open minded and read it. If you're not pro sex work, you probably won't read my book. You'll probably just automatically, if you're black and white and closed minded, you might not read this book.
Mm-hmm.
But I would hope that there would be people who if they are on the fence and they want to understand what this lifestyle is like, would read it and make up their own minds about how they feel about these things.
Yeah, let's go back to you even writing this book to begin with. I just really appreciate that you are like, I have a story to tell, but I'm not sure what it is. Like I want to tell a story, and then as you said, as you described earlier, I think, 40 years later, oh, here it is. This
Yeah.
is the story. This is the book that this is going to be my memoir, you know?
Well, really cathartic for me. I mean, I think the reason we write is to understand. I've
Mm,
been through some really, when you read the book, it reads like a suspenseful love story. And some things that happen, you're like, did that really happen? I mean, they're so dramatic right out of a romance novel.
yeah.
But, I needed to understand, what had happened, why I stayed in the relationship so long when it was clearly, unhealthy. what about myself, led me to be in these relationships. And, for instance, I don't want to give away too much suspense to the book, but I went into the relationship not believing in monogamy. I just thought existentially it just doesn't work. Everybody I know is cheating on everybody. Why are we forcing ourselves into this, a round hole in a square peg when nobody does it? Maybe it shouldn't be done. And part of the book is me writing about how I came to discover where that little piece in my heart was broken, that I actually believed that monogamy was impossible. So, I came out of the book, again, I hate to give away too much suspense, but, a one-man band and a one woman man. And, I've been in a monogamous, happy relationship for over a year now, and could not imagine being with another woman.
No.
So, my transformation was complete. But I think in writing the book, I answered some of the questions of why I was like that and why I was closed off. And I got to, I know you're interested in dysfunctional families, and I got to look at my family dynamic and ask how much of my own problems in the relationship were a result of, being in the family I was in. I grew up in such comfort that it almost was, comfort was bad, because I never learned some lessons that other people learn by going through drama. So, writing was my way of, understanding it all and putting it into chapters and learning lessons. And obviously cathartic, because, spending, a couple of years crying over a keyboard, you get it out of you. I don't have any lingering questions about it.
You literally read my mind, because as you were talking, I was genuinely channeling to you. I was saying, okay, let's talk about how this came to be. Let's talk about the family dynamics. Let's talk about those things and what you learned from it. I genuinely was formulating in my mind the question, how do I ask him to say, what did you learn from this, without giving away too much of the book? And you just did it. So congratulations. We are in sync. We are good. It's great. What would you like others to know about you as a human being, as a divorced father of two? Again, for lack of a better word, just going to use the common vernacular, trolling around on these sites looking for sex, right? Not really even love. You weren't looking for love. You were just like, let me just fill the void, right?
It's interesting, because I think I was looking for love. I really do. I think I just didn't know it, and I think I was afraid of it. And I had this term I called romantic anxiety. I physically got anxiety by thinking about being in a relationship. And being in arrangement is a great way to be in a relationship, but not quite, because you're agreeing, I'll meet you once a week, and, every Wednesday, and, we'll have fun, but never get that close. But I think that it had been 3 years since my divorce. And I think that there was a subtle part of me that was ready and just didn't want to admit it and didn't know it. And I remember when the moment I realized that Jordan and I were in love, she told me and I told her, it hit me that I had kind of been looking for love and didn't even know it, and had fallen in sight and didn't know it. It long since I had it. I don't know if this makes sense, but I literally didn't recognize that I was in love. Like, any fool is going to read my book and go, God, the guy's in love on the first date. It's so fucking obvious.
Yeah.
it's
No.
Okay, I don't know. It's so obvious that he was in love and she was in love, but to me, it was not obvious.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Wow, wow, wow. That is so good. Now, you have as you said, an blah, I can't speak today, an
Amicable.
amicable relationship with your ex-wife. And, what did she think about all of this?
Well, she's a very open-minded person. She's a therapist,
Mm,
so she's, seen a lot. Her main concern is just for the children.
hmm.
It's a very adult book, and
Yes.
she wanted to make sure that 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 the children would not be humiliated by it.
Yeah.
I let her read it and asked for her comments. And there was a couple small things that she said, if you just change this, um, that would help. And then we just engaged in an open dialogue with our children as much as they're physically able. They're 13 and 15 now.
Hmm.
And said one of the things I did was show them Pretty Woman. We tried to explain them as
Hmm.
best we could. So that was her main concern.
Hmm. Yeah. And have either of your children read your book? Do you know?
No, they're too young for it. It's just,
Yeah. I mean, no,
even
I'm genuinely
near
curious. Yeah. Yeah.
it's not near as racy as any of
No.
the 50 Shades of Grey
Oh,
books.
no. Mm-mm.
Those
No.
I'm tame compared to them.
Totally.
They're not ready for it. When they're in their early 20s or 18 or 19, I think they'll be able to read it. You know,
Maybe, I don't know. Even then, are we ever ready to see our parents in that way? That's the thing too. Sometimes we're like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to see our
I
parents in that way.
and if they never do, I'm sure they'll be interested in it. I know that it's too racy for my parents. My mother and father have said, we support you. We love that you wrote a book. It must be an amazing book. But we don't want to read about our child,
Oh,
some of these
that was
things.
going to be my very next question. I don't
Yeah.
know. I guess, that talking about family dynamics and dysfunction, if you will, because one of the scenes, if you will, in the book that really struck me was your mother sending you out of the room when a sex scene came on a movie. Right.
Right.
I mean, it's like, David, leave right now.
Right.
Cover your eyes.
Audience. There was one night where I was very upset about something that had happened with with the girl I was dating, and I went to an event where my father was getting a lifetime achievement award, and I was sitting around with my family and realizing, I couldn't tell them that, my sugar baby had disappeared on me. I didn't have anybody to talk to, and I start realizing that my family, as wonderful they are, their quirks, their eccentricities, is that they are loving and supportive, but not the most emotional bunch. They don't express their emotions in the way that I do. I wasn't even capable of expressing my emotions the way I am now
Yeah.
before all these events happened. Um, and the story you're talking about is I was looking back over my life and saying, how did I get to this point? And I remembered at one point when I was in a screening room with my mother and my family and some friends, and a foreign film came on, a very racy foreign film called Swept Away, that
Hmm.
Madonna remade,
Hmm.
later.
Hmm.
And at some point, something sexy happens, and my mother just yells, "David, out!"
Yeah.
you know, and um, and me and my friends had to leave. And even though I know her intentions were protective, just as my intentions of not letting my children read my book until a certain age are protective,
Hmm.
little things like that set up a pattern of shame, and in sexual shame.
Yeah.
The way I think would have been better to handle it if she had said, David, would you excuse yourself? And this is too sexy for you, or quietly pick me up and led me out of the room and explain to me, David, this is too adult for you.
Hmm.
um for you to see. But instead, I just was shut down. And I think that happened a lot in my childhood. It was just sort of, rather than say, here's the problem, and here's why you're not ready to see this movie, or here's why this discussion about sex is inappropriate. I just was shut down, and that led to a certain amount of sexual shame. And I think that our society lives with immense sexual shame.
Yeah.
I mean, compare it to European societies, the fact that, a woman can't go topless,
right.
or, woman can't be, people complain about a woman breastfeeding in an airplane,
Right.
Like, we've gone so far. And it was hard. And honestly, the hardest scenes for me to write were the sex scenes. I hate it.
Really? Yeah.
Because I'm kind of embarrassed writing, oh my God, I did that, and she did that. So, writing about sex is difficult. And especially when it's real too, I'm not writing a romance novel where I can, fantasize. I wanted to be very specific about what happened and the reason. And when I bring in a sex scene, there's a reason for it. It's not just torrid. It's part of a story. It's the reason I met this person, and the reason I had sex with this person, and why the sex was good or bad, and why it affected me. Mm-hmm. So, nothing was arbitrary.
So that, in a way, is part of your healing process, kind of healing the stigma of just sex.
Yeah, I had never had good conversations with my partners about sex,
mm-hmm.
And I think good sex always starts with good communication. And I had never been taught that. I'd never had the conversation about sex with my parents at all, about anything.
Yeah.
And the joke was, if you brought up something sexual at the dinner table, okay. The joke was, if you brought up something sexual at my dinner table, conversation was shut down, So mm-hmm. for me, it was hard to do. And if I can in some small way, just get people to start talking about these things. If people read a book and say to somebody else, hey, you should read this. He talks about sex and intimacy and vulnerability and sexual anxiety in ways that people don't, and in a much less dry way than in some scholarly book. I want to entertain while I'm doing it.
Yeah.
If I can encourage conversation, that'd be great. And that's one of the reasons why I'm sure you're going to ask me. A lot of people have asked me, why am I using my name?
Yes,
why am I?
That is, you are. Yep. I'm telling you, we're on the same wavelength. Right. Yep. Right. You already know it.
Why am I not using a pseudonym? Why didn't I change my name? Why isn't this anonymous? And the answer is that, if I'm not prepared to be a little embarrassed, if I'm not prepared for a reviewer saying, this guy is a pervert, if I can't handle that, I shouldn't be writing about it. I believe that if you're embarrassed to talk about the lessons you learned, then you shouldn't be talking about them.
Wow, that's so very powerful.
Do it, and I've been really surprised. I mean, my family members, most of them have read the book, and an interesting thing happens, which is once you start being really that open and vulnerable about your experiences, other people say, I don't like talking about it, but I've been through something similar. Mm-hmm. I've had, as I'll be at a dinner party and or an event, and I'll talk about my book, and I see people light up and go, God, you're talking about that? Come here, let me talk to you about something that I just went through. It happened yesterday. I was at a business lunch, and people were talking business, and I told somebody about my book, and he literally he looked at me in a completely different light, and he's like, God, I want to do that. I want to talk about some of the things that I did, but I never had the courage. So I think people that write, and I think it's also dangerous. It's a dangerous time for a man, especially, to admit that he's been sexually adventurous. After Me Too,
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I knew before the Me Too uh, came about that you don't date the people you work with. I always had, standards, and I'm not worried about people coming out of the woodwork and saying, I took advantage of anybody. But it is a dangerous time to talk about anything sex as a
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
So, it took some courage, um, you know,
I agree. It took immense courage, and just to hear you say that writing the sex scenes, which again, they were not like gratuitous sex scenes. They were not. I mean, they were very, very well written, and definitely not 50 Shades of Grey kind of thing. Oh, your writing is so much better than that. Trust me.
oh,
But it just I just I marvel at that, at your ability to even say that to me today. Because you could say, I mean, this book was easy peasy to write. It's just my story. That's it. But I mean, kind of carrying on the vulnerability of having it published and, out there for the world to literally critique you. I mean, that's what you're here I am. Here I am. Have at it.
thank you.
I mean, wow. I think it's such a beautiful thing, David. It because I as we started this conversation out, very few men will go here. And to know that those conversations are even happening behind the scenes at, lunch hour or whatever. Oh yeah. Yeah. Let me share my story with you, and how courageous are you to share yours. So just giving other men, other humans, the permission to say, look, this is something that we can do, and we won't die from it. Not from this.
Right.
Not from this.
Right.
Not from crying on our keyboards when
Yeah.
we're just really pouring our heart and souls out into it. So that's pretty fantastic. All right, my friend. Anything else you want to share? What's your publication date? It's June
June 14th.
14th. June
So
14th.
a week or two away. You can pre-order it on Amazon.
Okay.
Um,
Love it.
and I'm also did the audio version.
Okay.
So, that was not easy either.
Mm,
Talking about it seems like you never stop talking about it.
yeah. Yeah. Reading those sex scenes out loud.
Yeah.
Fun times. All right. So Amazon pre-order on Amazon. Do you have a website? Do you have Instagram? Do you have anywhere else?
DavidWinklerAuthor.com.
Okay.
I'm on Instagram, David Adam Winkler.
Okay.
Or you can just search up, Google the arrangement, David Winkler, and you'll find me.
The Arrangement, a Love Story by David Winkler, published on June 14th. You can pre-order your copy now. And give David a follow. Check this out. This is really good stuff. Any parting words, my friend?
No, thank you for having me. I'm glad that people like you are interested in provocative books like this.
Absolutely. It is. It is provocative, and I'm here for it. I'm always here for it. All right. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you so much. Nice meeting you.
Wow. I am just so appreciative of David literally bearing his soul here for us today, and also in his book, The Arrangement, a Love Story. I think it really struck me when he said, I think I was looking for love. I just didn't know it. I was afraid of it. Yeah. Wow. I hope in hearing this, you can find the courage to simply share this episode with a man in your life who may appreciate hearing it. For all of the talk of us women feeling put down and shut down by our society, let's remember that this also applies to men or male identifying humans. The Arrangement, a love story, will be released wherever books are sold on June 14th. In the meantime, pre-orders are available through Amazon. I have added the links to David's website and his Instagram to show notes. Thank you from the bottom of my heart and soul for checking out this episode. Light up, shine on.